Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate Breakdown for Friday, April 26th. We have made it to the end of the week. Let's make some money. What we're going to do over today is go through yesterday's lineups, the perfect lineups, the winning lineups, and then we're going to get into today's pitching, followed by some stacks to consider. It is a pretty interesting big boy slate we got today. 13 games to go over. So a lot to talk about, so we will jump right in. But before we do, as always, please come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to everything we do. All the props, all the DFS, you get it all, one low price. Everything we see here, you get for all the sports we cover, all the tools, get it all. Now, let's get into this slate. I'll move myself over there. We'll get over to the projections. We will get over to FanDuel, and a game has started, so we will go to yesterday's slate and the perfect lineup. All right, so we got the 7-gamer. Colorado game went nuts, and thus we're going to see a lot of that Colorado game, and then the Toronto and KC game got called after 5 innings. So, what do we got perfect lineup-wise? Zach Wheeler, I was high on him. He did well, put up 52. And then we have a 2-man Cleveland stack. We have a 2-man Colorado stack. 1 Padre, and a Texas guy, a Seattle guy. Got it done. And then the winning lineup on good old FanDuel went to third and schlong. Zach Wheeler, 3-man Minnesota stack, 4-man Colorado, and then the one-off with Seattle. So congrats to him. He beat me out by a little bit here. I absolutely had a chance to take it down at the end here. Rogers was up with a couple guys on base, and third and schlong didn't have him, so he had a full count. A walk would have brought me up to second. An RBI and a hit would have brought me up to first, or RBI and a double would have brought me to first. So I was right there for a takedown. Didn't quite get it. Got fifth. My lineup had a 4-man Colorado, 2-man Cleveland, one-off with Philly and Seattle. So close. I just needed this one-off to be Julian, and I win. Montero at that spot, Julian here, and I would have been taking it down. So, but close, no cigar. Congrats to third and schlong. You got it done. Now let's get over to the DK slate for yesterday. And reminder, DK had 8 games. It had this Dodger one. And I was really high on Yamamoto, and he got it done. He was right there with Wheeler, just 2 points less. And the winning lineup over here, 2-man Twins, 2-man Colorado, had a Padre, had a one-off with Jose Ramirez, Clemente, and Andrew Vaughn. And the winning lineup went to BS Golfer, who won by 6 points. They had that Yamamoto and Wheeler combo, as well as a 5-man Colorado and 3-man San Diego slate. So this guy only had Philadelphia in the early games, and the late games fully propelled him into first. What a ride that would have been. Congrats to him. Way to take home $50K. Now let's get over to today's slate and get into the real fun. And today's slate, starting with pitching, highest owned, we got Luis Gil, 7,800, 21% owned. I do think this is fairly interesting slate with pitching. I think ownership is going to end up being fairly spread out. But Lou Gil is a spot I am absolutely interested in. He's been very good. 2.84 FIP over his last 5 starts. Solid K rate. 31% over his last 20, but up to 33 over his last 5. He's had big-time strikeout stuff, and Milwaukee's striking out at 24.5% versus righties. Their average is meh. Woba is okay. I don't mind the spot for Lou Gill. My issue here is I definitely like him on DraftKings more than on FanDuel. The reason being, he hasn't been efficient. 5.2 is the furthest he's worked into games. For him to really get it going on FanDuel, we need him to get to the 6. We need to get those extra bonuses. But the K upside is absolutely there for him on either site, and I am definitely intrigued. Combined K rate, 28%, is just wildly high at 7,800. Pretty hard to say no to that at 2.5x value. Next, Corbin Burnes. Corbin's obviously somebody you got to consider. 9.8K here on DK. On FanDuel, he's like 11K. So big jump up over there, but it's versus Oakland. Strikeout 26%. The K rate for Corbin isn't super high, but he's also somebody that can work pretty deep into games, so that K rate isn't quite as needed. He is a guy that can work 7 innings easily, and if he's working 7 into the 7th and has that 28% K rate, it can definitely get there. The combined K rate is high. Opponent splits are terrible. Corbin definitely looks good. And I do expect him to probably be higher owned than 28%. I would say he is probably the highest owned guy on the slate. Next, we got Zach Gallen versus Seattle. Seattle's a team we've been picking on, and you can definitely go back in this matchup. They're striking out 27% versus righties, so you have to consider them in this spot. They are decent versus righties, and Gallen is averaging 26% less fantasy points away, but he is a very, very good pitcher, and I'm absolutely willing to go here. Say if his ownership drops a little bit, Corbin's comes up a little bit. I think both of them then look they're in very similar spots. Combined K rate similar, their price similar, 1.9x here. Corbin was 2.6x, so LineStar likes Corbin way more, and I think that the field will, feel very similar about that. Next, we got Chris Sale. Sale's been great. Cleveland hasn't been great versus lefties. 2.87 WOBA, 128 ISO. The only thing is they just don't strike out much. So that is the only thing going away from Sale. Sale has a solid K rate, 28%. Combined K rate is only 22%, and that's the only reason I would be going away from Sale. He's priced up with the studs, but that K rate is just way lower. Next, we got Ober, 6,800, super cheap for a guy with the 25% K rate. Angels strike out a lot, but they've been hitting righties very well. 183 ISO. Ober averaging 22% less fantasy points away, so definitely some things in Angels' favor here. He's allowing a ton of fly balls. There's hard wind blowing out to center, allowing a lot of hard contact. I wouldn't be that surprised to see a home run or two let go by Ober, but if he can keep that as solo home runs, there's definitely room for him, and 24% K rate at a price under 7K is interesting, and I absolutely do not mind taking some value Ober here. I don't like the spot as much as if he started yesterday, but I'm fine with taking some Ober there. Joe Musgrove, 7,400 is too cheap. This guy can absolutely be one of the aces in the league. He's off to a little bit of a rough start, but also plenty of signs of him turning around. I mean, he worked 7 innings, only allowed 3 versus a very good Toronto lineup. He just didn't get the Ks to really, really show some support, but Philadelphia strikes out a decent amount. Musgrove can be efficiently, can work deeper into games, and I'm okay having some swings on Musgrove. Don't want a ton, but definitely interested. Next, Nathan Eovaldi. This is one that I am a little bit intrigued with. 8.6K. We only have him at 1.7x, but the one thing I have to say is when Eovaldi gets it going, which he gets it going at home more often, 24.5% more fantasy points, and Cincinnati has a 25.6% K rate. When he gets it going, his K rate is solid. He has those games of 8 Ks. We've seen 2 so far this year. He's had plenty last year. There's absolutely 30-point upside in a matchup versus Cincinnati. They hit the ball hard versus righties, have a decent WOBA, can steal some bases, which they probably do versus Eovaldi because he's not great about keeping guys on base. But I'm absolutely intrigued here, and I see a path to upside. With lower ownership, he's intriguing to me. No way am I saying go all in on Eovaldi, but I definitely want him part of my pitcher player pool. Zach Eflin versus White Sox. You got to consider anybody versus the White Sox at this point, especially if they're low owned. I think he is a safe pick, but he does not have the ceiling of some of the other guys, and that is the issue here. Crawford is fine. There's the upside there. He strike out 27%, 26% combined K rate. I do have to bring up this, though, averaging 50% less fantasy points at home. Now, tonight's not the greatest hitting environment at home, so that should work in his favor a little more than normal. But there is some strikeout upside here, so I think you can consider him. Now, some real pivots here. Kyle Harrison, I'm actually kind of intrigued with today. So, Pittsburgh striking out almost 30% versus lefties. The splits for Pittsburgh are terrible. 239 over the last 150. Only 42 home runs. Not a great ISO. Over the last 20, 204.054 ISO. I think taking some swings on Harrison at super low ownership with value is kind of interesting, and a combined K rate of 24.7 is definitely intriguing and, raising my eyebrows a little bit. Another guy, Amanga. Shota, he's been extremely good. There is some pitching weather in Boston. Boston striking out 29% versus lefties with our projected lineup. Haven't been good versus lefties. 286 WOBA. 0.99 ISO. I'm absolutely intrigued. He has some strikeout upside, 26% pretty much. So I'm willing to take some shots, and we have him at 2.5x and going low owned. I think he's very, very intriguing. And the last one I want to throw out there, Patrick Sandoval. 7.2K, we met 1.9x, 25% combined K rate. So Minnesota lineup hasn't been good versus lefties either. 25% K rate, 290 WOBA, 137 ISO. Definitely intrigued with some Sandoval in this situation. So I think there's a lot of different ways we can go with pitcher today, which makes this slate pretty interesting. And we definitely don't have to follow the chalk, but I'm going to have some of it. And I'm going to have some pivots for sure. I like this. I like this slate as far as the pitching situation. I'm definitely going to have some different combos there to get a little wild. All right, on to FanDuel. Corbin Burnes, highest owned, 30% owned. Next, Zach Gallen at 11% owned. This is a slate where I don't think we need to take the chalk pitching. Look, Corbin Burnes looks great. I'm going to have a lot of him. We have him projected 4 points higher than anybody, almost 4.7 higher than anybody. So I'm going to get a lot of him. I think ownership is going to go his way, but with so many other options, I'm going to get a little different too. I like Corbin. Fine with Gallen, but I'm not going to have very much of Gallen compared to Corbin. Fine with a little bit of sale, but I do think this price is a little higher than it should be, so I might not get a ton in this matchup. Cleveland's not great versus lefties, but the lack of upside does worry me a little bit with him. Nathan Eovaldi, definitely will have a little bit. Lou Gill, love the upside, will absolutely have a little bit. But as I said, he's not quite as interesting on FanDuel just because his inefficiency. Zach Eflin, somebody with a ton of efficiency. I am intrigued. Again, my worry here is the strikeout upside. He doesn't have a ton of strikeout upside, but we have seen plenty of games where he works into the 7th inning, still is able to get 7-8 Ks because of the efficiency and his ability to work late into a game. So he's in my player pool. Over 8.5K may not be in my player pool here. Cubs pitcher Shota, definitely one of the guys I am considering, as is Patrick Sandoval at only 7.2, and Kyle Harrison. Same thing. I am absolutely intrigued in both those guys at super low ownership. We've seen Sandoval be able to put up those 40s and 50-point scores, and if he does that at 7.2K, going to be real hard not to have him. So I'm definitely intrigued with pitching on this slate. There's so many ways to get different and so many ways that are interesting. So let's get over to some stack attacks here. And it looks like we're going to be starting on FIP because I have left it there from yesterday. So I'll just start out there whenever it finally loads. I do have to say it's nice not having a Colorado slate. I think there's so many different ways to go on this slate, and ownership is, going to be so much lower just because we do have a situation where it's 13 games. So highest FIP, Quinn Prester, 7.11 over his last 20 starts, 7.55 over his last 5. Now, he hasn't had 20 starts, so that is definitely a less sample size than 20, but needless to say, it's a very interesting spot for the Giants, who are insanely low owned and don't really hate going there with a 4.4 implied total either. I think it's an interesting spot for sure. Now, let's get over to the owned. If you notice, Dodgers, Toronto have a game total of 9. Cincinnati, Texas does. Yankees, Milwaukee, but those are the only 9s. The weather isn't super hitter friendly today. It is kind of pitcher friendly, which also goes to, I don't think we need to go chalk pitcher situation today. I think we really, really can mix it up here. All right, so Tampa Bay is coming in as the highest owned versus Chris Flexen. No surprise there. Flexen's terrible. Their bullpen is bad. Makes a lot of sense to want to pick on that and go with Tampa Bay. Also decent, value-wise. They're not very expensive. So there's a lot of reasons to want to go to Tampa Bay. Minnesota's popping up against Sandoval. I don't love it. I don't think they are going to be that good of an offense. Today, I do like Sandoval. However, we do know we can get lit up a little bit, and the value is at least there because Minnesota hitters are so cheap. So I'm willing to take a little bit of shots on Minnesota. And let's go over to projected now. Barreled balls for Tampa Bay does look a little bit low, so they haven't been hitting the ball well lately, but anything can happen in one game. Now, highest projected is Atlanta. Atlanta and the Dodgers. No surprise there. Atlanta are huge favorites, minus 260. Dodgers, it's even money, pretty much. 9-point total. Implied totals are very, very similar. But I would way rather pick on Logan Allen than I would Chris Bassett. It's also in a little more hitter-friendly of a park for Atlanta. Logan Allen, 5.59 FIP to start the year. He's allowing 2 home runs per 9 so far this year. And he wasn't that great last year. 4.9 FIP. Probably doesn't work super deep into this game. Definitely intrigued with Atlanta a bit. Dodgers, I mean, the top of the lineup is so good, you got to consider them. And Pages is at least interesting to bring down like that average, player for that Dodger stack a little bit. So at least intriguing. However, I don't like picking on Chris Bassitt, and I definitely don't like picking on him at home. That is my worry with the Dodger stacks. If they are super high owned, I might just go somewhere else with that one. And they are all over the top. So let's just move it on over to value. Bunch of evenly matched games here, except for this Baltimore one at Atlanta. Everything else is, fairly close odds-wise. All right, now value-wise, so Washington is popping up. I think this is very interesting versus Miami. They got Anthony Maldonado, so it's likely a little bit of an opener situation. Definitely intrigued with Washington. We've seen them actually be a little successful with the bat, so I don't hate that one. Minnesota popping up. Like I said, their hitters are just cheap. It's a cheaper pitcher on the other side. But he's been good. 4.15 FIP over his last 20, 3.66 over his last 5. They're popping up just simply because of their price. So I don't love it, but don't mind going there. Boston's popping up against Amanga. Don't love it, but you can do it. This Boston lineup that they've been rolling out lately with all their injuries is just not very good. So it makes sense to want to pick on them a little bit when you have a good pitcher. And let's go to the ceiling. Ceiling should get us some other situations in there. One thing I do want to point out is the Cincinnati versus Texas here. Evaldi is good, but he can get hit. He also lets some stolen bases go. So it is kind of tailored for Cincinnati to score some runs some different ways and some different fantasy points. So I am at least a little bit intrigued by that, and it'll be a little bit of a leverage stack because nobody will be there. So highest ceiling, the Atlanta Braves. Baltimore is popping up. I think Baltimore versus Ross Stripling, very intriguing. We know how good that offense is. They're also not super, super expensive, so don't mind going there. Milwaukee's popping up against Gill. Like I said, Gill can get a little wild. He can be inefficient, and you get him out of the game early, and it becomes a little interesting. Or get a couple hard hits when he already has guys on base, and Milwaukee can make some waves. And lastly, let's take a look at the teams. All right, so highest implied total, we got Atlanta, Texas, Dodgers, Yankees. Let's look at those first 4. Ashcroft on the bump versus Texas. He's letting a lot of hard contact, a lot of high average exit velocity. So Texas is absolutely interesting. The Cincinnati bullpen has been decent, though. Cleveland's bullpen has been decent. So that is one reason to maybe not bump Atlanta up anymore, whereas Toronto bullpen is bad. But Chris Bassitt works deep into games usually, so I don't love picking on Bassitt. Yankees are popping up against Ray. Ray is just a meh pitcher. However, at least their bullpen is good. Miami versus Washington. Trevor Williams is not very good. Their bullpen's letting a lot of guys on base. Miami could definitely do it. One thing, their offense just isn't that potent. So struggle a little bit to want to pick Miami. However, you could go with a value stacks of Miami to get there instead of, say, chalky, Minnesota. Baltimore, absolutely in play here. San Francisco in play. Prester, we talked about, he's not very good. Allowing some hard contact. The bullpen's, meh. The Diamondbacks have just put up some giant games lately, so you can definitely consider them. Hancock's given up hard contact, but that Seattle bullpen's good. And, that's pretty much where you want to go. Don't mind trying to pick on Ober with this Angels lineup that has been actually a little pesky and not terrible. He's allowing hard contact. His FIP is 5.38, so don't mind going there as well. A lot of different ways to go. I think it's going to be a real fun slate. Good luck to all you guys, and let's make some money, and we will see you next week. Adios. Peace.